Is the original on old hardware better than the remake on new hardware? Hi, this is Magnus. I've played video games for a long time. This channel is a gaming channel. I'm more of a nostalgic gamer who loves remakes, remasters, and reimaginings. But in this particular video, I will show you an example of what constitutes a bad remake. Now, before I get started, I wanted to explain my particular definition of a remake and what that is, as opposed to a remaster or reimagining. Scott the Woz recently made a video of his definition of remaster versus remake versus remake. My definitions are similar but will classify it as follows. A remaster is when you take a game and basically give it a fresh coat of paint. For example, upping the resolution, making the game 60 frames per second versus 30 frames per second, improving textures, etc. Essentially, it's exactly the same game, just with a good polish. No real changes. A remake is when you basically build the assets from the beginning, ground up, but essentially, it's the same game. Crash Bandicoot comes to mind for this one. Perhaps you may throw in a new level or two, or tweak a few things in gameplay, just to suit modern day, but essentially, it's exactly the same game. And finally, there's what I call a reimagining. This is when you take a game's concept and completely make it new for today. It's like, what if Capcom made Resident Evil 2 today instead of 1998? These concepts have you completely throw away old game design in preference for something new and relevant. All you'll have in common with the original game is, essentially, the title and some really basic story elements. Everything else is mostly new. In today's video, we're going to focus on a remake. Now first, let me start by saying that a remake's intentions are essentially meant to take advantage of modern hardware and make you appreciate what the current generation can do with games that you might have loved from a previous generation, without changing too much about what made the original game so good. However, this didn't quite work with this first one. This game we will talk about for today is Mickey Mania. Mickey Mania was a game released in 1994 for the Super Nintendo, Sega Genesis, and Sega CD. Now in this comparison video, I will use the Sega CD version as the definitive 16-bit port of the game. It has CD quality music and the most content when compared to the SNES and Genesis versions. I picked up this game shortly after release for the Sega CD as it was a must-own for me. You see, ever since the release of Aladdin for the Sega Genesis, I wanted nothing more than to own a cutting-edge game with animations that were hand-drawn. Those games just looked amazing to me, and to have Disney's mascot in a Sega game, it seemed like a no-brainer. Castle of Illusion was a classic on the Genesis, and you knew Sega would do right by this port. I was not disappointed with the Sega CD version of Mickey Mania, as it was and is still a good play. This project was actually designed by David Jaffe, who would go on from this game to direct God of War for the Sony PlayStation 2 10 years later. This is not the only time a developer would go from cartoony story to a more serious game, but it was definitely memorable. The game got mostly positive reviews, but thinking back, most people remember Castle of Illusion for Genesis more than this game, which is pretty sad because Mickey Mania is so good. But this game did get a remake. Apparently, the game was remade for the Sony PlayStation in 1996 and called Mickey's Wild Adventure. I do not get why they renamed the game at all. Maybe they wanted to act like it was a new game when it really wasn't. Who knows? It was remade by developers known as Psygnosis and released only in Europe. But make no mistake, this is a remake of Mickey Mania with plenty of changes. The question here today is, why do I think it's a bad remake? I'll break it down into 3 categories that are important for a remake: graphics, audio, and then finally gameplay. Essentially, these 3 elements are key in order for a remake to be considered a step ahead of the original game's design. So now, let's get right into it. Graphics. So when you put the games together side by side, this is one thing that I can say at first glance, the graphics look really good on the PlayStation Remake. The detail added to most backgrounds and items in the foreground really pulls you in. It's almost like a sense of 3D life to the game when compared to the Sega CD version, and that's what a remake is supposed to do, right? Really make you feel like you're playing next generation hardware, right? Well, the magic doesn't last. Unfortunately, let me show you why. Let's start off with Mickey, our protagonist. The character is missing animations. For example, when you turn around in the Sega CD version, there's one frame where he quickly switches directions. Yes, it's only one frame, but that one frame of animation adds character to Mickey's movement. Now in the PlayStation version, when performing the same task of turning around, that frame is completely gone. Just doesn't exist. Here's another example. There are specific weasel enemies in the Prince and the Pauper stage that throw knives at you. In the Sega CD version, these characters walk, stop, throw the knives, then turn around and go the other way. In the PlayStation version, none of those animations play out. All you get is just knife throwing in one direction, with the other animations just completely cut out. The other weasel that shoots arrows at you is also much slower. Many other animations play slower in the PlayStation version as well. Take a look at Pluto on both versions. The Sega CD version is significantly smoother. VRAM is the memory available that a system can use to display on-screen animations for video games. The Sega CD only had 2 megabits of VRAM, while the PlayStation had 1 megabyte of VRAM. In other words, the PlayStation had at least 4 times more VRAM, and this is what they were giving us? Sure, a lot of it could be going to the color and more detailed backgrounds, but still, it's kinda jarring. Now it wasn't all bad, but that is subjective. Take a look at this tower level where Mickey is either going up or down a tower. The Sega CD version couldn't draw polygons at all, so instead what you see here is really creative coding by Traveler's Tales to load assets into the limited amount of memory to trick you into seeing 3D. But none of it's really 3D, to be quite honest. It looks pretty good. So the PlayStation version decided to one-up the Sega CD version here by actually using 3D polygons, and the results are okay. If you look at it at a firm distance, it actually looks pretty cool. Though I must admit, I was using an emulator on my PC to record footage of this game, so you will see a few graphical glitches, but for the most part, this is what you get. Though when looking at it up close, I think the Sega CD version looks way better. Even the background has more detail in the Sega CD version than the PlayStation version. Seriously, what happened here? While we're at it, let's look at title sequences. Which one is which? I really prefer the look of the Sega CD, as well as how the animations play out. Again, PlayStation just seems to struggle a bit more here. I had to point this out too because this is just a distracting lapse of paying attention to detail. So in the Mickey and the Beanstalk level, you start off far away from the giant's castle, so you can see it in the background in both games. Later, after you pass through the underground portion, you appear at the steps of the castle about to climb in and make your way inside. In the Sega CD version, the background is simple, just clouds, nothing more. PlayStation version decided to add a bit more detail by including the castle in the background? This makes no sense. You reached the castle. Why is it in the background? I just don't get it. Let's move on to the chase sequence with the moose. So the Sega CD does not do a bad job at all, but you've got to give this one to the PlayStation version. It looks like they actually tried here and didn't do a bad job. Both of these levels are nice to look at in their respective consoles, and at least it finally shows a bit of why PlayStation should have been better. As an added tidbit, PlayStation even included an extra one of these levels where the giant from Mickey and the Beanstalk chases you, which didn't happen on the Sega CD version, even though it was advertised in the game's manual. So from a graphics perspective, though the PlayStation made a few attempts with nicer backgrounds and some added 3D effects, the original Sega CD game had the right mix of animations and 3D effects of its own to be better than the remake. Now it's time for the audio portion. When it comes to audio, it's very confusing. So let's start with the good. The tracks sound incredible in the PlayStation version. There's a bit of tweaks on some of the tracks to add a bit more flavor, and quite honestly, they brought me to a smile while hearing them. The Sega CD versions are not bad at all, but they're just as awesome sounding. But the PlayStation version, while not full remixes, add a bit of a kick to the music. Here, take a listen.
Hiya, Mr. Goat. What are those things? Gosh.
Not bad, huh? Well, that's about all the good stuff I have to say about audio for the PlayStation, because though I enjoyed the tracks, there are a few missteps that ruin it for me. Now this may be a bit of my bias, but it seemed a bit confusing that they switched a bunch of the tracks around to different stages. Sure, if you never played the Sega CD version, it may not make a difference, but for me, it was jarring at first, so I think it probably shouldn't be considered a negative. Just switched around. But what should be a negative are the congratulations screens for each of the levels. When you complete a level in the Sega CD version, you get a nice little jingle. Now I know this jingle is on the PlayStation version because I checked the sound test, and there it was. But when playing the game, it doesn't play after each level. It's just completely silent. I checked online gameplay videos to see if it was simply because I was using emulation, but others showed the same quiet congrats screen. Why? I can give the PlayStation version a bit more credit, as there are some added sound effects here and there, like the added sound before the baby spiders fall.
Ooh, baby spiders! Ooh, baby spiders!
Or the baby sound effect after you defeat the Mad Doctor. But then they go mess it up by completely removing the boss music from the battle with the Mad Doctor. Ugh.
Oh no! It's the Mad Doctor! Oh no! It's the Mad Doctor!
All in all, though the music seemed to have received an upgrade in the quality with a few added sound effects, the missing end screen music of each stage and the placement of tracks during sections that just seem to be a bit off make it so that the audio upgrade should have been left alone. The original Sega CD version is better in this category as well. And now finally, gameplay. This isn't something that should have changed too much in a remake. In fact, remakes should only make gameplay a bit better. Unfortunately, that's not the case with the PlayStation version, and we'll go all the way back to the title screen to start. The first frustration you'll find is when you highlight options and press start in the PlayStation. Rather than going to options, it'll automatically just start the game. You actually have to press another button other than start to go to options. This is why I went straight to gameplay in this video accidentally. What the heck? Sega CD version will put you in options regardless if you press start or one of the other buttons. Then there's Mickey. First of all, he is the slightest bit slower when it comes to moving around. At first glance it seems the same, but for example, when you need to stand after ducking, it takes Mickey just a split second longer than the Sega CD version, which slows you down when you're in an intense situation in this fast game. Then there's Mickey's marbles. Now I've played Mickey Mania for Sega CD for years, and I feel like I'm pretty good at it. One of the reasons is because Mickey moves very efficiently after a button command. Say I want to turn around midair to throw a marble. On Sega CD, no problem. On PlayStation, you've got to wait for the slightest bit before you can throw the marble, or else he won't throw it in the right direction. This is so crucial and can either result in your death or delay your ability to complete a stage by a bit. Let's watch how I beat this boss at the same time on both Sega CD and PlayStation, and you'll see how much time it cost me. Then there's the PlayStation's loading screens. I can't believe that the PlayStation has more loading screens than the Sega CD. And to add to that, the loading screens on the PlayStation don't really make any sense. Here on the Sega CD, Mickey is reading a script, doesn't move, but it's a cute way to get the point across. On PlayStation, he just stands there. Then before he can look at his watch, the level loads. It's just weird. Now when it comes to gameplay against enemies and obstacles, things are ever so slightly different. Take this ghost section as an example. The bridge falls in Sega CD, but the ghosts appear in sequence. On PlayStation, they just all appear at the same time. It's a change, surprising, but changing a few things like that isn't necessarily bad. But then some things are confusing. Take the skeletons in the Mad Doctor level. On Sega CD, all bones hurt you. Don't touch them. Simple, right? On PlayStation, some bones don't hurt you. Others do. Take this section. The bigger bones hurt you, the smaller bones don't. But then this other enemies, the smaller bones do hurt you. Come on, man, that's just cheap. In my opinion, the slight delay in Mickey's animations mixed with the tweaked enemies and platforms that are a bit harder to focus on make the PlayStation game slightly harder. Though I'm not against a few gameplay tweaks to add difficulty, I am not a fan of the fact that many of the changes are just because controls are not as precise as they used to be, which make the remake way more difficult to complete. In the end, gameplay should have been better, but it wasn't. It became frustrating. The original Sega CD version wins, hands down. So remake versus original. Without a doubt, stick with the original here. Graphics win out, thanks to the better animations, good 3D effects that rival the PlayStation, and more attention to detail. Better audio because it just sounds right where it needs to be, and better gameplay with tighter controls and a challenge that doesn't feel cheap. So yes, Mickey's Timeless Adventure gets a bad remake stamp of rejection. So there you go. That shows you that not all remakes are good, and in this case it shouldn't have been bad at all in my opinion. If you want to see original versus remake videos, let me know. If you guys like it, I'll keep making other videos like this. If so, and if I do make more videos, what would you like me to compare? I'll include remasters and reimaginings as well. Thanks as always, and please subscribe for more. See you guys later. And check out my videos too. Bye.